Every time, John, right?
I'm like bebop into that intro. I'm like, that's kind of catchy.
Yeah, it is. Well, good afternoon, everybody. We got a great show today. We have a special guest. I'm sure a lot of people know him in the industry, and he's definitely here to give consulting advice all the time. Shad from Lucian Inc. What's up, buddy?
Not much, Richard. Thanks for having me on. John, hello, and hello, everyone out there.
Good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
Good to see you. So we're not going to waste any time. You know, like we always say, me and John, like we're going to deep dive into it. So, Shad, tell us a bit about yourself, and then we'll continue the conversation.
Sure. So just real quick on Lucian, we do sales and management coaching. So I'm not a traditional sales background or sales consultant. I actually started off thinking early in my life I was going to be an engineer and designs planes and cars, and I could probably be no farther from that if I tried. Like a lot of us do, right? But when I was in college, I got out of college and went overseas for a year, did some consulting work in the tech market over in India, and then came back and started working on some operational pieces for a pharma company. And then I went, I'm ready to move up to New York City. And when I did, I took an inside sales role. And I didn't know what I was doing, but it just seemed interesting. And the company was international based, and I love to travel. And I've been doing some stuff in the logistics world. So I was just like, okay, let's do this. And I started helping people and got, pretty good at sales, like helping the outside sales guys who bring opportunities, qualify deals, close deals, get them across the finish line, negotiate where they needed. And a lot of people just kept telling me, you're pretty good at this. And I started going, I think I am. So I took a transfer back from New York City to Indianapolis, where I'm from. I grew up out here back in 2010, took an outside role at the company. And I was what we like to refer to at Lucian as a wing it star. You're just kind of winging it and throwing stuff at the wall. And sometimes it's sticking, sometimes it isn't. But you can't, if anybody ever looked at me, John, if you ever looked at me and went, so Shad, what exactly do you do that gets you, a prospective client to go, yes, I want to work with you versus someone else, or versus who we're working with now, or what do you do to close across the finish line? I couldn't tell you. I could name off some stuff, but I couldn't go, hey, here's an actual process. Here's things I do. Here's why this works. It doesn't. And I really remember sitting after a 6-month review. I was doing really well in the branch office I worked out of Indianapolis. And I remember the regional sales manager, my boss, and the branch manager who I pseudo reported to there in Indianapolis talking to me. And they're like, this is great. Especially I brought in this really great retail account, which was a big focus of the company at the time. We're doing a lot of business. And they go, how did you do it? And I literally, guys, I'm not kidding. I looked at them and went, I don't know. And I remember they both kind of looked at me, and all of a sudden the light bulb went I was a young kid at the time, light bulb went in my head and went, maybe I should get some help if I really want to be good at this and actually know what I'm doing. And the company was what you see in a lot of companies was the typical sink or swim. First day they throw you in, they just hand you some stuff and say, go. There wasn't really a program for developing sales folks, for training them ongoing to help them get better, to really set things up. There weren't a lot of tools in place, like, kind of point to an actual sales process, or even, different tools I could use. And so I said, I'm not going to get the help here. I'm going to, it's going to be kind of hit or miss here. And so I started looking around. And I think I actually just Googled sales training in Indianapolis, like sales training or sales coaching. And I went to a Dale Carnegie course for 8 weeks, which was good, taught me some good stuff. And I love the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and build on that. But it still didn't address a lot of the stuff that was particular to me. Like, why did I have a hard time at the time when it came to holding price or talking about budget or, talking about money? Why was it that it seemed like at times the things I was doing was working, at times they weren't? Why did it seem that I had certain situations I was nervous about going into or how to handle? And so I started looking around again. I came across Lucian, our blog, and I read it, signed up on it, and went, wow, that stuff's speaking to me. And I went in for a 2-hour session. I remember the guy who was my coach, who's now the president of our company, Aaron. I just remember the way he challenged me in this session. Like, I remember one of the things he asked, he goes, how often do you follow up with clients? And here I am, a young sales guy. I'm like, every week I'm calling them, right? Every week, right? Whether they need it or not, they know I'm there. And he just looked at me and said, why don't you align with them on what works best and have a good next step set? And I went, I've never thought of it like that. Like, that would be better managing my time. And I wouldn't have to worry, what if I don't hear back from them? Right. And so I became a client individually, switched a company, but still was a client with them. And about 7 years ago, I had made a decision. I said, if I ever get burnt out of the logistics, transportation, sales industry I was in, I'm going to do something where I feel like I'm really helping a lot more people. Not that I wasn't, but something that I really felt passionate about, where I was like, I can really help a lot of people in a lot of ways. It just never had clicked to me what Lucian does. And so I said that to Aaron, who's my coach, one morning, and he looked at me and said, why don't you come work for us? If you know Aaron's personality, he's very joking. I thought he was joking with me. I kind of blew it off. But the whole rest of that night, the next morning, it rattled in my head, just rattled. And I couldn't get past it. And I called him up and went, were you serious? And he said, yep. And that was 7 years ago where I made that leap.
So clearly the right move.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I've been approached by people from my old industry, trying to get me to come work for them and do sales or a sales management role. And I always say, I said, the only thing I would ever change is if I did something on my own, start up on my own, in this business. But I love what I do. Every day, even the toughest days, like my wife will ask me and she'll go, she can tell I'm frustrated from a long day or a challenging client. She'll go, do you still love it? And it's always yes, no matter how hard it is.
That is, that is such the key of finding something you love doing, so it doesn't seem like work. And we've all been in that situation where we've done something that we didn't really want to do, but we had to because it was a job. Even whether we were good or not, it didn't matter. Just we showed up every day because we had to, not because we wanted to. And when you want to, it makes all the difference in the world.
Absolutely, John.
What something struck me when you were telling your story, and thanks for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
It made me think of how many, and sad to say, it's probably the majority. And I'd like to see what you get your input and what you've seen. It's my experience that the majority of sales related businesses fall into the category of what you encountered first, where it's just kind of like sink or swim. Like there's the phone, have at. And there's not a lot of training, not a lot of structured training, or it's like, okay, go sit next to Bill over there and just do what he does. And that's your training. And you succeed in spite of yourself. And that's where a service like yours can come in really valuable.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you go to how many, John, without knowing exact numbers, in my 7 years of talking to companies and experience before, I'd say probably 85% of companies.
Wow.
All sizes. If it's small, let's say a small entrepreneurial company early on starting up, all the way up to large organizations. That was a not to be named large pharmaceutical organization that is one of the top 5 in the world. And, huge sales force, not just only in the US, but globally, not a structured training program. Right.
Wow.
And it's a large amount. And absolutely, I remember first day at the company I was working for when I took the outside sales role here in Indianapolis, literally the branch manager came in and I had a desk that sat in the operations room. So I didn't even have a quiet desk, right? Like people are yelling back and forth, operational stuff. Hey, we need this info for this shipment, blah, 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 right? And my desk is an old wooden desk, like right in the middle of it, right? Not very conducive to making cold calls or prospecting or having, any kind of phone meetings or anything like that. And I just remember 8 a.m. on that Monday morning, he comes in, there was a stack of manila folders with papers going every which way out of them. The laptop of the sales guy they fired 6 months before sitting on top of it. He put on the desk 8 a.m. and said, all right, go to it. I'll meet you at noon for lunch. And that was it. Like,
Oh, man.
John, Richard, like probably for stunned for 5 minutes. Like just okay, so I had lived in New York, but my family was in Indianapolis and I would work out of that office when I came back. So I knew everybody, but I didn't know any of the ins and outs. I hadn't been selling directly like outside sales in that industry. So it's not like I went, okay, I've got all these contacts in Indianapolis and, and I've got I know the network, like I was starting from scratch and that was just boom, right on your desk and go to it.
Man, you were put out to the sharks, I want to say, right?
It was a good learning experience, but at the same time, I look back and go, man, that's why I think another reason I got into this, because I don't want to have to watch people go through that. That's just brutal.
And you know what? I think we all have. I had started a sales job too, and it just give me a list, call, you'll figure it out, and you're like, holy cow.
And a lot of times the reason why is because what I've experienced is talking to business owners I help is they go, well, I hired what I thought is this really great salesperson from my industry who came highly recommended, who did really well at my competitor, even though it's a different environment, right? Different size, could be, a different setup. They should know what to do. They don't treat it like an accounting position where you go, okay, we got to bring them in and train them so they know our systems, they know how our books work, they know how we do things, right? They have all the right contacts. They don't treat it like, an operational position. Hey, we got to, you're going to have to, shadow somebody. They go, it's this nebulous thing where you're just good at sales or you aren't. And so they just go, we hired you, you're a rock star, and we're probably paying you a great salary. We're going to pay you a really good commission on top of it. Watch you bring in. You should know what to do. And it's not the case. It's not always the case.
And even if they know what to do from a sales perspective, let's say they're the best salesperson on earth, they don't understand the way that company wants you to do it. And that's often, I've always found that's the bigger challenge of hiring someone from the industry. And like, for example, in the world of recruiting, which I grew up in, obviously, we'd hire people and you like getting people with recruiting experience. But with that, they have good experience, but they may also have some bad habits that you don't want other people emulating. So they might be successful, but are you hiring a bunch of one-off islands, or are you trying to form a team that all works together in synergy? And that, I think, becomes a challenge as well at any level within the corporate infrastructure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things we do a lot of times when we're helping clients when they're hiring, or even when we start out coaching with them, is we're going to do an evaluation of their team, or we're going to make sure we're evaluating extremely early in the hiring process. And we have a tool that we use, objective management groups, sales hiring assessments and evaluations that's sales specific. And it's just for salespeople, and you actually can tailor it to each company, to their environment. Like what size of deals do they need to have experience closing? Who should they have experience calling on? What types of companies, size of companies, what profit margin should they be, experience protecting, strategy, et cetera. And the reason we use that early on is because we go, absolutely to your point, John, is we go, okay, we want to hire people not only that are good, strong salespeople, right? That OMG, objective management groups, shortened as OMG. Way before it became a thing. It's been around for 30 years, but it's so fitting. It was like the CEO, Dave, he must have had some premonition, right? But with OMG, like their tool is, they have so many validations they've done over the years to go, okay, we're going to make sure not only they're strong salespeople, but they're also strong fit to your environment, right? Because they have to be the right fit in your environment. Just because they came from a competitor, hey, they may have been really successful because of that competitor. They were handed all the great leads. They were handed a great business. And you may be going, no, we need somebody that's going to hunt. We're not known in this market. This is a brand new. We need somebody that's going to pound the pavement, make the cold calls, go out and network. And if that's not that person, even though they've been successful, but they were used to getting handed the leads, or, hey, they had a network that just built, they're not going to be the right fit. And you want to know that as early as possible. So you're only now talking to the ones who you go, they're strong salespeople. They're going to be a strong fit for a company. And now let's make sure the experience validates and the cultural fit is there, that they're going to be good on our team. Right? A lot of companies do it the inverse. They go, well, let's do a good cultural fit. Man, they sound really great. Richard, he looks great, sounds great. On paper, he's great. I love him. He's just like me. And they don't or they try to do the validation of the actual skills and fit in the company on the back end, or they don't do it because they're afraid, what if the validation at the end says, no, they're not a good fit, but I love them. They seem so good and they would be so great in our team.
And that lends to the validation that you've got to keep the interview process non-emotional. The more you can make it scientific, black and white, based on certain criteria, you've got your mold of what type of person you want. You've got your must-haves, your deal killers, all that kind of stuff. You're going to like a lot of people, but you can't hire them just because you like them and you think they'd get along with everybody. Sometimes, that's just not going to work out. And then you end up retaining that person for too long, more than likely.
That's the other end, is that especially if you fall in love with them early, you're trying to make everything right. And how much, we do a little exercise where we go through and go, well, let's talk about how much this person who's not working out, who wasn't a great fit from the start, how much have you spent in their salary? How much have you spent in their benefits, all those things? How much potential lost sales because they haven't been delivering, right, over this period of time? And because you're holding on to them. And the reason why is we want people to see there's a huge impact, even though they go, well, but we're doing okay. No, there's a huge impact of not having the right person in that role. And to your point, John, is I teach a lot of my clients, be curiously skeptical when you're doing the interviews. Curious, you're going to ask a ton of questions to validate that information on the resume, to validate stuff from the assessment, to validate other pieces. But skeptical is that people, just the way it is, there's a lot of training out there. People are great interviewers. People look really, really good on paper, right? And you got to be skeptical of and really dig in deep. I was helping a client with this today. She's got some interview questions for upcoming interviews for a position, and she sent them to me. And I just took a lot of her questions and went, okay, you got to ask more of, okay, give me examples. Why did you do what you did? How did that benefit you? What problems did you have? Right? You got to be curious to go that next level, because anybody's got the polished answer they're ready for the general questions, right?
Exactly.
Well, tell me about your experience, right? Like they're ready for that. Are they ready for, give me numbers, right? Tell me, okay, hey, you were number one sales rep in your company. Great. Out of how many reps? Hey, you won President's Club. Exactly.
Yeah.
And the other person just didn't show up most of the time. You won President's Club. Well, what did you even have to do to qualify that? You exceeded your goal by 200%. Great. 200% of what?
Exactly.
Right. I'm sorry.
Qualifying questions.
Yeah. If it's 10 grand was your goal and you blew it out of water by 20 grand, we need somebody who can close $1 million. Not going to be the right fit. Right. And that's the things where, as I work with my clients, tell them is you got to go deeper. You got to be curious, but still skeptical until they prove everything right. And you go, okay, now we've passed all the gates. Now let's figure out if this is, if we can work out a deal that works for both parties.
That's amazing. You're like the Bill Belichick of coaching. Man, you're in detail here.
Now, Richard, come on. I'm an Indianapolis fan, man.
All right.
Also a Boilermaker, I noticed from your profile.
I am boiler up for and Big Ten for the Big Ten conference fans out there.
There you go, buddy.
So I'm a Terrapin, so don't hold that against me.
Oh no. Hey John, always Big Ten first, man.
Okay.
Unless it's IU. I use our big rival. So that one I might choke on a little bit.
One thing I want to talk about, Shad, is actually cold calling. This is something our audience, I see it across the board. Nobody wants to pick up the phone these days. What are some tips that you're giving some of your clients now to overcome this?
So absolutely, cold calling, I'm not going to lie, it's tough, right? And if you look at the prospecting activities that have the highest return, it has one of the lowest, right? So here's what I tell my clients it's about, yes, do you need to cold call, especially early on and you're a young rep? You know why? Because you need to break the stigma in your mind. If you can get conversations started with folks, if you can get meetings and business from cold calls, how much easier is all the rest of asking for referrals, networking, right? Getting intros and leads. It just makes life easier. So one of the things we have at Lucian, when I started, we started out like this: is when you come in, you're given nothing. You're not handed a book of business. You're not handed leads. And we just like, even though we're consultants and coaches, we because we want to keep our sword sharp, with our saw sharp with our clients, we have our own quotas and growing our business, and we go out and sell and prospect just like our clients do. Because if I'm coaching or telling a client something, it's because I've tested it, not it's theoretical, right? Or I read it somewhere. It's because I've done it. A lot of my clients were struggling with cold calling recently. So I went back and did some cold calls and started testing some stuff and started going, what are they run into? How can we overcome this? But when we start out Lucian, in your first 4 months, you have to make 1,000 cold dials. Doesn't mean you have 1,000 conversations, but you got to pick up the phone and dial it 1,000 times. And the reason why is because we want you to break any fears, any stigmas around cold calling, right? So some of the tips, the very first thing is we got to work on mindset. We got to work on mindset is if you absolutely fear cold calling, if you tell yourself, Richard, there is no way I can ever get anybody to have a conversation. No one wants to talk to me, especially now with COVID. Less people are in the office. No one's picking up. Guess what? Won't matter what tools you have. It won't matter what technique you have, because you'll never do it, right? So that's first thing is we got to work on mindset and go, is that true, right? Is it harder to get to folks right now because of, people not being in the office, et cetera? Yeah, but there's cell phones. People are answering those. Is it hard because, if you look at cold calling and cold emailing, because the amount of spam and the amount of people pitching over email and things like that is up? And yes. Can you still break through? Absolutely. If you start to show up different, if you're consistent in your calling, right? So after we work on mindset, now it becomes, we got to work on behavior, right? So what, if someone goes, okay, I need to go out and sell this amount, right? This is my goal for the year. I got to bring in this amount of revenue or whatever it may be, this number of orders. You got to have a plan. You work backwards, go, well, how many prospecting attempts a day do I need to make? Right. Because if not, it's the classic of what I had at my former company. It was just like, all right, here's your goal for the year. Go to it. Here's what's due for the month. Well, the people who have been there and done it, they'll have a plan, or they'll go out and they'll work their butt off. The others are going, I'm not sure if I'm doing enough. How do I know if I'm doing enough? It's the classic, if you want to go on a trip, but you don't pick a place to go, then you walk down the street, you went on your trip. Right?
I mean, you are so speaking my language right now. Perfect. This is like getting me all jazzed up because I used to. I employ the same.
John's pumped up now.
I was like really fired up. Yeah, you know where I'm going. I employ the same philosophies, Shad, and it always. My thing was, to your point, I used to sit down with folks and ask them, well, how much money do you want to make this year?
Great.
And then first we decide if it's a realistic goal, and then I said, okay, well, if you're willing, we can trace that back to, if you want, daily activity based on the metrics that we understand and the average amount of money you're going to make from a placement, et cetera. But when someone, when a manager would ask their recruiter, what are you forecasting this month? And they'd say, probably 22, 25K. And there were managers that would just take that and walk away. And my question would be, well, where's that coming from?
Yeah. How are you coming up with that?
So I agree with, I like that philosophy of incorporating the science part of it. Sales is art and science. Well, the science end of it helps you figure out how much you have to do. And that's a critical element that a lot of people, to your point, they just say, all right, here's my goal. I'll just start dialing and hopefully I'll get there.
Right. And it's like anything in life. If you have a goal you reach, like whether you realize or not, if it's something important, right? Like John, to your point, is how much you want to make. And there's got to be a personal goal and reason tied to it. One of the things I tell all my managers is people work hardest for the pool in their backyard, not the one in yours. You as a manager don't know the pool in your folks' backyard, and whether that's money because I love making money, I just get a thrill out of it. I love the hunt and the win. Whether it's money because I'm able to do these things with my family, I'm able to take them on a vacation. My wife and I, like one of the things we're doing, we're building a nice back patio and fire pit, right? Whether it's whatever is our motivation, is figuring out how to give them more. Well, it's got to start with that, but it's got to start with, okay, what do you want to make? And then being able to work a plan backwards. So, okay, every day, am I doing enough behavior? And then is the behavior now from there paying off because it's effective enough? If you look at any big goal you've achieved or any one big goal you achieved, you had some sort of behavior plan. It may have just been in the back of your head, but you worked some sort of plan and you knew when you got off and you had little checkpoints along the way and ways to go, I'm either making progress or I'm not. And now I need to pick it up. A lot of time, like I said, a lot of other positions in companies, we have these things set. We have metrics, we have checkpoints, we have regular check-ins, but sales, a lot of times people don't know how to do it, or they don't realize you could do similar with that and have that plan. Right. And so back to your question, Richard, is you got to build a behavior plan. Know what am I doing daily? What metrics do I need and KPIs do I need to track to make sure I'm on track? Things like how many dials I'm making each day. How many conversations with decision makers am I getting out of those? How many meetings or longer call, whatever it is, Zoom meeting, in our today, it would have been just a traditional face-to-face meeting before. How many of those am I getting? How many of those are turning into actual opportunities? Not every meeting or prospect you talk to, if you're doing a good job qualifying, will turn into an actual opportunity to do business. How many of those are closing that we're winning versus losing? How long is that taking in each part? You want to track those things. So that way, once your people are doing enough behavior, right? Let's say your prospecting number for a day is you got to make 20 prospecting attempts, whether it's cold calls or whatever. Well, now you can start to affect and go, okay, where are we seeing the drop off? Hey, you're making 20 attempts and you're getting 10 conversations, which is great, but only 3 of those are going to a meeting. Let's dive deeper. To your point, John, what's happening? Why is it we're having 10 conversations and 3 of those folks or 7 of those folks are saying no?
So let me ask you a question, not to cut you off, because this is where I see the biggest downfall as well as the biggest opportunity in a lot of sales organizations is, so you can go in and you can train people what they need to do. But once you train them and you're out, it's up to the leadership of that group to then manage to those expectations and to do that deeper dive. And, I know as a trainer, you don't always have that direct line of sight into that. And you kind of put your faith in them saying, look, here's what I need you to do. But then they actually have to take the time and invest the time to do it. And a lot of them, unfortunately, don't. They figure, okay, Shad came in, he trained my people, they know what to do, and I'll just kick back. And if they fail, they fail. Versus working with you to then dive into those stats and data to figure out where they need additional help, what's working for them and what's not. That's unfortunate for the employee that's sitting there on the desk trying to make it happen.
Yeah. So John, great point. So one of the things we do very early is we set that expectation. We're not coming in here to give you a bunch of fancy stuff and then you got to figure out how to execute. We're not coming in here just give you a bunch of strategies and tools and you got to figure out how to execute. We're actually working with the managers, and we actually start with the management and leadership 2 to 3 months out before we even touch the sales team.
So you get their buy-in.
To get not only buy-in, but also to get their skills and things up to, and their strengths up to speed, right? It's the analogy that we use is it would be like this. John, do you have kids?
I do.
Okay. How old are they now?
24, 22, and soon to be 21.
Okay. If you remember back when one of them was, let's say 7 or 8, 6, 7, 8, somewhere in there, they may say, Dad, I want to learn how to swim. And you're like, that's awesome. I want to teach how to swim. I think that'd be great. It'd be great bonding. All of a sudden you get out there in the pool and you realize, I don't really know how to swim. If your kid's drowning, how much are you going to need to help them? Right? It's the reason why on airplanes, why they tell you put your if you're in a low pressure situation and the mask drop down, put your on first, is because if you ain't breathing,
can't help
somebody else breathe. So we got to get those managers. They don't have to be perfect, but we got to get them steps ahead. So they go, we know at least what to do or where to start to guide. Another thing that we do is I mentioned the evaluations we do those from a sales management and leadership standpoint, so we can figure out, are we going to have problems with certain managers? Are there certain managers who are just so focused on themselves that they're not going to be good for coaching a team? Where are some of the gaps in their skills when it comes to coaching, right? Being able to ask questions, diagnose problem, get to the root, and then not just tell somebody, go do this, or jump in and rescue them and go, I'll do it for you, but actually coach somebody to get better. How strong are they from an accountability standpoint? If you've got something that's called need for approval, you want everybody to love you and like you more than you do respect you, and you're a manager, if your employee is not performing, you got to have a tough conversation. You won't have it, or you'll hint at it and hope they get the hint instead of being direct. Those are the things we've got to help them work through ahead, along with putting some of the structure, like we talked about, behavior plan, metrics, sales process, pipeline, et cetera, making sure those are strong. We need to get those a step ahead before we ever start helping out the sales team from a training, consulting, coaching. And then ongoing throughout, we're going to be tied in with those managers. And we're going to do things, we're going to get recorded calls and video meetings. We're going to make sure they're going on ride-alongs. I rode along with some of their people. I've just had them say, hey, here's a guy who's coming in to learn. He's a potential new sales rep. And I rode along and observed firsthand. Just like, Rich, going back to the Bill Belichick, just like a football team, we're going to watch game film, and we're going to break it down and coach with the managers and teach them, here's what you need to be coaching on, what to look for and how to coach it. Go back with the people, right? We're going to get our hands in there and dirty because that's the only way we know we can help. Our goal is to help transform their sales organization. Yes. Is there a point, John, where eventually they'll fire me? In the case that, not fire me, but the fact that we've got things rocking and rolling. Sure, they usually keep me along, and have me help other people or, in different fashion. But I want to get to that point where they know what to do. And now it's small tweaks of things versus I'm just handing them stuff and go figure it out.
Yep. So just to be clear, you shouldn't just throw your kids in the pool and
no.
Okay.
Never, John. Never.
Well, if we go back to the sink or swim, like we're talking about from a sales standpoint, that's literally how it is, right? That's, a lot of organizations, same thing with managers, right? They go, you were great at selling.
Oh my gosh, yes.
You were great at this, so you're going to be a great manager. And they never go, what are their skill sets that they're missing? Are there things that they're not good at that you need training on? And once again, the ones who innately have it or figured it out or have somebody mentoring them or taking training somewhere else, they'll be good managers. The other ones will struggle. And it's not that they're not good managers. It's just they're missing the tools, the beliefs, the skills they need to be good managers.
So basically, they have to be hands-on is what we're saying. You know what I mean? When you're a manager, you got to be hands-on. You just can't shut your door and hit Netflix all day. Doesn't work.
Correct. Yeah,
no, not at all.
One thing I want to talk about is rejection. And we see this all the time in sales calls. 2 days, 3 days, no appointments. You're drained out. What do you tell managers? How do you coach them to pep them up for the rest of the week?
Sure. So here's one of the things that and it's funny. I was just listening to a video of a mentor. I don't know him directly, but a mentor like you follow, like Darren Hardy is somebody I follow. He used to be the editor of Success Magazine,
Okay.
and he has a small, quick video blog that comes out anywhere from 2 to 10 minutes every morning. He puts out, and it's management topics, it's sales, it's stuff from his experience, right? And so I was watching it this morning, and it's so true. It was talking about motivation. How do you motivate your people? And the very first thing he said, which is so true, and I believe and I profess, is that you can't motivate them. Now, here's what I mean. Now, let me caveat that. They either have motivation or they don't. You can't create it. You're not. We'd love to be God. We'd love to be able to do that. But if we were doing that and we could motivate people like that, created in them, heck, you'd be running the world right now, and and everybody would come to you. Somebody's got to have motivation or they don't. And what I mean is motivation for a reason to go out and keep selling richer and keep going through the rejection, right? Now, as a manager, what can you do? You can stoke the fire of that motivation, especially when things are tough, right? And the last year's proven that. If the motivation is there, it's going to wane at times because people run into walls. There's rejection, right? It's things are taking longer to get decisions to sell. People are trying to get you to discount because money is tight for their business. You can stoke that motivation, but it goes back to what we talked about earlier is you got to know what the pool is for them, right? You got to know what the pool is. If you don't, as a manager or leader, know that to start with, you're already behind the 8 ball.
Yep. You got to know the why factor.
It's got to, absolutely. You got to know the why. And then from there, it's got to be, okay, do you know how your people are motivated, right? I look at our team at Lucian. There's some of us that are motivated by competitiveness. We love to compete. Like every month we're going, I'm going to beat you. I'm ahead of you. Or hey, we have this initiative and I'm leading you, right? There's some of us that are competitive with ourselves. We could care less about what Bob down the hall is doing. But man, if I ain't hitting my own goals, I am burning up inside. Mm-hmm. There are some of us that we are more motivated by the fact of a win. We love the wins and the thrill of the victory. There's some of us that are more motivated by the fact of a loss. I'm a hates to lose type guy. The wins, I could tell you, some of those, but the ones that steer in my mind are the ones I've lost, where I go, it burns me up, and that drives me because I'm like, I don't want to lose this, right? You got to know how your people are motivated. Are your people motivated by their extrinsic, so money and the dollars? Are your people motivated by intrinsic, being their best, having their skill sets developed, the best version? Are they motivated by the altruistic? That means that it's about the greater good, how your product or service helps more people, right? First off, managers got to know those things and go, okay, if I know those, then am I motivating people in the right way, right? If you got a bunch of people who are competitive with each other and very extrinsically driven, sales contests where they get money in their pocket will work wonders, when things are a little rough. If you got people who aren't, no. But if you're going, hey, we can use this as a way to get you more skills, help you get better, and they're intrinsically driven, they will take off. So that piece, and then you got to, as a manager, always bring it back to the why. Acknowledge with your people and go, look, I know it's tough. Like, don't try to be the manager who goes, oh no, it's not tough out there. Well, no, it's reality. It is, right? Your people aren't out there making up stories. Reality it is, but also go back and go, hey, let's go back to your why. What is it you're going after personally? Not just the company goal, but what you're going after. Okay, let's look through behavior, technique, and mindset, and what can we adjust that can help you get there quicker, that we can overcome this, because that's going to get you to what you want.
So true. And I think your tone of voice too, how you come across too, is a big thing, big times. Yeah. John, anything else that you have on your end?
So the one question I have for you, Shad, is, when I like you believe, I think we all believe that while there's a number of different mediums to use, if you're in sales, you still got to be picking up the phone, because that's the only way you're going to build relationships and influence processes and deals. There's so many, and I don't want to categorize any generations, but there are so many now that because it's much easier to send an email, it's much easier to send a text, and they can send out hundreds and thousands of texts and emails all day, and that's doing their prospecting. Getting them to use the phone in addition to is sometimes a challenge, because they feel like that's how you communicate nowadays. How do you address that with those people?
So first thing, John, is I do kind of the inverse. This was taught by a mentor of mine. I'm not going to fight them to start. I'm going to go, okay. You text, call, or text, email, LinkedIn, whatever it may be. All right. We're gonna set a goal. I'm going to give you a month, and you're going to go your way of doing it. Now, if your way of doing it's producing and it's getting us the conversations, because they got to eventually go to a conversation, right? In the meetings, and we're getting opportunities for something. Let's keep doing it. And let's figure out how to do more of that and get you more effective. Now, if your way is not working, then we're going to work on some of these other ways. So that's the very first thing, because like if they figure out a way that works for them, like each person's just like kids, right? Each of your 3 kids is different. The way you parent them, right? The goal of, I want them to be like this type of person and have these morals and principles. That's the same, right? That's your family and that's your values. That's the same, but the way in which you parent them, right? If you look at one of your kids, and maybe you can be really direct. Maybe that firstborn kid, you can be like, "What are you doing?" Right? And they get it, right? They're just like, "All right, Dad, I got it. I'll fix it." Maybe the middle child is, you got to kind of soften it up and, okay, let's talk a little about this. You sharing a story or analogy, and it starts to get them. But if you're really direct, all they're going to do is cower back, right? So you got to go. So first is, I'm not going to find. We go, okay, we're going to give you a period of time. We're going to let you do it your way. But if your way is not working, now our agreement is we're going to go to our way that we know is proven over time. Then at that point, now going back to, there is, how do you get, is one of the first things you got to start working on the underlying beliefs. You got to have your plan in place. Go, okay, we need to add in cold calls or calls to this, but you got to work on the underlying belief. What are you telling yourself going into those? Why is that belief there? Is that true? That's one of the best ways to start to overcome beliefs. Is the first thing you got to go, is that true? Like, is it, if someone goes, oh, it's always that, it's always that people are going to hang up on me when I call them. Is that true? Has it been every time? Well, no, there's these times okay, well, tell me about that. Well, what do you think was different? What did you do differently there? And so you got to get people to see is it's not true, because a lot of times our beliefs, it's one thing happens and our brain keeps looking for evidence to make it true, right? Mm-hmm. And it ignores all the other evidence out there, right? I love one of the ones, if it's a salesperson who's been in market for a long time, they'll, they're having a hard time getting to people. They'll say things like, I've called on everybody already. Everybody. Like, there's nobody new to call on. Really? So, and that's where you bring up, so you called on all these? Well, no. Well, I thought you called on everybody. Well, I don't know them. How am I? Okay. Oh, there's the problem. We don't know them and how to get to them. Okay. Let's work on the right end of the problem. Right. And so it's by asking questions to get them to discover that that's not the truth. And now we have to start, going, okay, what behaviors do we need to put in place to shift the mindset? Because if you want your brain to just suddenly wake up tomorrow and go, I believe totally different, it doesn't happen that way. Like, you can go, let's say your belief that you're struggling with is, I'm not good at cold calls. I suck at cold calls. I'm terrible. And you go, the new belief I want to have is that I'm good at cold calls. It's easy. Well, you can sit there and tell yourself that today. And then tomorrow morning you wake up, guess where your brain goes? You're not good at cold calls. You didn't suddenly go to sleep last night and become great at cold calls, right? So instead you got to go, okay, well, what, if I was good at cold calls, what actions would I be taking? Well, I'd pick up and make my cold call account for the day. I wouldn't worry about the outcome. I'd be focused on just having a good, solid conversation versus getting the meeting right away. I would be, expecting that people want to talk to me. There's a lot of people out there that do. Well, now your behaviors, if you do that consistently, your brain's going to start going, I'm seeing different evidence, and that belief will change.
Love your approach.
So true. Yes. Shad, you're right on all this stuff, man. This is the mental health part, everything.
I don't know. I mean, it's just years.
No, I really believe it.
And like a lot of, like I said, we go out there and we do the work ourselves. And so it's a lot of lessons we've learned, and you pick up things from other folks, and, and you're always learning. Like I always tell my clients, I go, I learn as much from them as they do from me.
Totally.
Whether it's the challenge, they give me a challenge of something I haven't figured out, and I got to go back to my team or other people I know and go, okay, how do we figure this out? Whether it's something so many things I've learned and say over time, or things my clients have said, like where I just literally go, can I steal that? That's awesome. Right. Like, that's such a great, or they were like, we're doing this and this is working. I'm like, Okay, tell me about that. And then I'll test out and be like, yes. Okay, now we're going to use that with other clients.
You know what? You're so true. And my grandpap said this before he passed away. Your brain's like a sponge, absorbed from everybody. And then you'll be a super genius at 60.
Well, I also believe, Richard, is when you get older, it's you realize how much more you don't know as you get older, right? And the more you realize how much you don't know out there.
Exactly. One last thing I want to touch base on, and I've seen it on your website, some of the bad habits of 2020 that we need to stop in 2021.
Okay, let me hit a couple of those. We've actually touched on one of them just a minute ago. So non-supportive beliefs. It's those things like I'm not good at cold calling. It's those things like I can't talk about money. In 2020, it was, oh my gosh, COVID's hit. Nobody's going to be in office. Nobody wants to talk about business. Nobody can spend money. Well, you got to stop and go, is that reality? No, there's still people out there buying. Businesses have. Is it different now? Yes. But a lot of those beliefs that people ran into last year were there before. I give talks for the ASA and other groups and webinars. And one of the things I stress to them, I go, look, if you're some of these things in sales you've been running into in 2020 didn't all of a sudden happen in 2020. They were there before. All that happened was the pandemic brought them to light. Anytime there's chaos, there's unrest, there's unknown, all it does is elevate the fears and the challenges you already had. It just brings them to the surface. So that's one of the first things is non-supportive beliefs. Do you have beliefs that are holding you back? How do you identify those? Have you started to go, what if the opposite was true? What would I do? Actions you're taking to get out of it. That's a big one. This is another huge one I've seen with a lot of owners and CEOs and presidents and managers and leaders before, this happened last year, and even now more indecisiveness. I'm going to use this as a reason not to take action or to wait. Instead of going, hey, here's what we know. Here's the good, here's the bad, here's what we know, here's where we want to get to. Now, what action can we take? I can't remember who said it, but there is more lost by indecisiveness than by deciding and taking action.
Oh, I bet.
Right? Absolutely. I still see that, and it just got really, really bad last year. I've been spending a lot of time the first couple of months of the year on this. What are those leaders and managers' top 3 priorities, and are they actually spending time on them? If you look, it's a little exercise I learned from a productivity course I took. I call it the 4Ds. The first is double down, or first 2, double downs. What are the top 3 things you should be doing that drive your business to the goals, that drive, the growth of your business, that drive the leadership? And how much time are you actually spending each day, each week, each month on those? Now that you've identified those top 3, and I make my leaders do just 3. You can only do 3. Because the human brain, you get too many on that list and you're not going to do any well, right? And then now I'd say, let's take a look at everything else that's left. Anything you're doing that is not fit into those top 3. All right, so next piece from there, delete. What's the stuff on that list that you, at some point in time, Richard, made sense because it was a report that was helping us figure out this, but you're still doing or you're still meeting on, and it's having no effect to the bottom line. It's making nothing move ahead. Delete them. What happens if you just drop them, take that time out of your calendar, and boom, you clear it up and you clear that headspace. And then finally, delegate. What's all the other stuff left that has to get done for the business to run? You think of admin stuff, you think of scheduling, you think of expenses, you think of, reporting, you think of whatever. What's all the other stuff that has to get done for the business to run, but should be done by someone else? It's not in your top 3. It's not where you bring the most value. And what's going to be, who do you delegate that to? I say delegate and elevate, something that you could delegate to them that they get an additional responsibility and develop. And what's your game plan to do it and by when? That's a huge one, is getting leaders back. With all that happened last year, leaders got spread thin because they had to jump in, because had to lay people off and business still got to keep running, right? Had to do these things, but now it's time to, let's get back to our top 3 to drive the business ahead. Last 2 here. We already talked about not knowing what really motivates your people and not aligning to that. Huge. And that was there well before, it just got worse last year. And then finally, not coaching your people to be successful. All right. You're spending too much time as a leader or manager doing the stuff your people should be doing because you want to look like the hero in rescue, or because you think coaching is telling them what to do or doing it for them. right? Instead of figuring out how do I coach and develop so they get stronger, so I don't keep solving the same problem time and time again. So many managers I talk to when we start working with, they go, just so frustrated. Like we like my people keep coming with the same problems. Don't they get it? And the top conversation I have is, you might be the problem. Actually, you might be creating the loop,
man.
Right? Like first you got to, you got to understand, go, well, what's happening? Like, why are they coming to you with, what have you done? But a lot of times, probably 85% of the time, they're without realizing it, and they're not intentionally doing it, but they don't realize it, or they don't know what they don't know, or they're so emotionally involved, they can't step back and see what's happening. But a lot of times they're creating the loop and they don't realize it.
Well, sure, because people come to their manager, hey, what should I do in this situation? And the manager says, well, I'm the expert, so I'm just going to tell you what you should do, as opposed to saying, well, what do you think you should do?
Right.
And seeing where their mind is at.
Yeah. And that point, coaching, they go, oh, coaching, that's probably going to take some time. It means I got to sit down and have a conversation. I'm so busy. I got 20 things on my book. But they don't see, it's death by 1,000 cuts, right? They don't see that the little 2 minutes there, and another little 2 minutes tomorrow, another 2, and it's been going on for a year, that adds up to hours on hours and probably days they've spent, where if they would have taken the time for that 15, 20-minute coaching conversation, they could have corrected it a year ago.
Wow. A lot of information,
stuff.
John. Am I telling you or what? I mean, if anybody's out there needs coaching to the top, I'm going to watch this show again just to get some tips, man. I'll tell you what, Dad, you really gave us some good insight here. How can everybody reach you out there on your social media platform?
Sure. So they can reach me on LinkedIn. Shad Tidler. I think it's Shad Tidler, at LinkedIn, or the LinkedIn handle. You can reach me there. It's actually got my contact info on my bio. So my cell phone and my email are right out there, because people want to reach me. I want them to be able to get to me. I don't want them to have to, go through a bunch of channels. Also, if you go on the Lucian website, www.lucian.com, you can go connect with a consultant on our drop-down menu. And I'm in there, and you can connect, and I'll get a message directly to me if that happens.
Good stuff. We're going to have you back later in the year, Shad, to do more recap on this. I mean, this is good.
Absolutely.
Stuff.
Yeah. Thank you guys for having me on. I really appreciate it, and a lot of fun, and happy to always share and help people. That's 7 years ago. That's why I got into this, is to help more people. And so anytime I can help folks, in any media or way, happy to do it.
And you know what? I just have a name for you now. You're a clone between Drew Brees and Peyton Manning.
That's better. No, I respect the heck out of Bill Belichick. I may not like him because I don't like the Patriots, but
I know
the winning and what he's done, without a doubt. But yes, Drew Brees, being a Purdue fan, I was actually there, and I got to witness Mr. Drew Brees and sat next to him in a class. One of the nicest guys in the world. But I tell you what, guys, it was his junior year. You could tell. You knew he was going to be a phenomenal quarterback. I mean, his mind is unbelievable, the way he thought through stuff. And I remember it was a business law class, and he would, his jocks who would like be joking around with the other guys, and then the professor would call on him. He knew every time. Like, his brain was so sharp and just so smart. And like the stuff you see on the field, that was in the classroom too. I mean, he is just a brilliant guy. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff. Once again, hey, I want to thank everybody for attending today. John, we'll see each of us next week, right? With a new guest, right?
You know it. Like it or not, we'll be back.
That's right.
Awesome. Guys, thank you very much. Appreciate being on here. And thank you to all of you out there watching.
Sounds good. Remember, guys, reach out to Lucian. They'll lead you to the top. Take care, guys.